Welcome back, folks, to part 7 of 9 of the 2020 MMA Prospect Series. This video particularly will feature the middleweight division, and it's a huge video with the 40 fighters we're going to talk about, so sit back and relax. We're going to be here a while. This video consists of some very high-level fighters that are ready to step into the big show today, and also a mix of fighters that are new to the sport, that are somewhat raw, but showed something special, so I decided to include them. And again, the fighters in this video are in no particular order. There are 40 guys I want to talk about. There may be other prospects that are better out there, possibly, but it's a good bunch. Typically, the Prospect Series videos, the fighters range from, late teenager up to the age of 30. We have a few fighters in this video, probably 7 or 8, that are pushing that 28, 29, 30 range. The rules, if you're new, no UFC experience, and that includes no TUF, no Contender Series, no Bellator, no PFL. Very rare to see anybody from One or Risen on my videos. You won't see any champions from like a bigger promotion like KSW, and no fighters previously mentioned on my channel will be in these videos. Some fun facts about today's video as well. The combined record of the 40 fighters we're going to talk about are 307 wins against only 15 losses. We have 40 fighters from 11 different countries. Also, feel free to hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and that goes for the fighters as well. Please, if you like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe, share. And also, if you're new to this series on my channel, for each fighter we talk about today, down in the comment section below, you'll see a video link to their fights, highlights, and that kind of stuff. So please check it out. All right, let's get things kicked off. The first guy we're going to talk about is Cezary Kęsik, 29 years old, 6 feet, 185, 12 wins, no losses, 9 knockouts, 2 submissions. Crossfight Radum is his fight camp, fighting in Poland. Taking a look at some of his key wins, he's beat 10-5 Georgi Lbatle, 12-3 Alexander Ikik. That was in KSW, a great fight, and that was a great fighter he defeated. 7-4 Peter Walitsky, and 6-2 Jan Kowatson. So he's beat some decent guys. There's 3 or 4 videos in the section below. Check it out. A lot of the fighters I talk about in my videos are fighters from parts of the world, especially Russia. A lot of fighters are in the military, and that's their #1 priority. So you don't see a lot of these guys come to the UFC or Bellator, these big shows, even though most definitely they can be there and they can compete and be champions. And there's an example of one. For Cezary, the UFC isn't his #1 goal, the military is. But nonetheless, he's an exciting, highly aggressive fighter that finishes fights with 11 stoppages out of his 12 pro victories. 2-time Polish amateur champ. Good hard kicks to the legs, body, and can kick to the head as well. High volume puncher. He really comes to brawl. He's got a powerful overhand right. The ability to be in there with a high-level kickboxer and be able to trade kicks like Ichit shows this guy is talented. And also, he closes the distance very well. He utilizes his pretty high-level grappling. And again, when he's on the ground, most of his victories have come via TKO, but he is a submission threat. And he does have really good ground and pound. So he's an exciting fighter, and at 29, pretty much the time is now. He's for the most part in his prime. And sadly for UFC and Bellator fans, based on his military background, it's very unlikely we'll see him in one of these big promotions, although I sure would love to see it. And who knows, maybe we'll get an opportunity, but the chances are low. Nonetheless, a guy to check out for. The second guy we're going to talk about, Andreas Gustafsson. This guy's a beast. 29 years old, 6'1", 185, 5 wins, no losses. I had met 10-1 as an amateur. 2 knockouts, 2 submissions. Vaster's Fight Club out of Sweden. 2018 Male Amateur Fighter of the Year. Key wins. He's beaten former UFC fighter Almakar Alves. I have a couple of videos in the section below. Andreas is a very, very physically strong fighter. Closes the distance fast and uses his power for takedowns and slams to get the fight to the ground. Smothering grappling. Technical, but is also powerful. Quick transitions on the ground. Very powerful ground and pound. Used his knees along the fence to soften his opponent up. I haven't seen much of a stand-up game, but also I can't really comment on that section. But I'm believing that may be an area that may need some improvement. He's shown that he has a good gas tank, can go the distance, and as mentioned, a very successful, extensive amateur career, winning a silver medal at the 2018 IMMAF WMMA World Championships. At 29, again, the time is now. Would be interesting to see him in there in a bigger promotion, and see him in there with somebody that can wrestle with him, and just to see what his striking would be like. But definitely physically strong guy, and an interesting prospect, and a very tough guy to beat. Next on the list, Andrei Petrovsky. 28 years old, 6 feet, 185. Maybe better suited for 170. 5 wins, no losses. And again, an extensive, successful amateur career. 3 knockouts, 2 submissions, fighting out of USA. Key wins, he got a nice win over 4-2 pro and 9-0 amateur Andre Hall. Again, check out the video section below. A former NCAA wrestler, Petrovsky is another example of an American wrestler turned mixed martial artist, which more often than not equates into a great prospect. Petrovsky very recently turned pro, as mentioned, after a successful amateur run. Obviously, wrestling is his bread and butter, but he's got, and he has great takedowns and slams. Very aggressive fighter and fun to watch. Very powerful and overwhelms opponents. And he's finished all 5 thus far in his pro career. He's got great ground control and wrestling, and opens up opponents for submission opportunities, which he has taken advantage of. He's pretty comfortable on his feet as well. He's not flat-footed. He's a southpaw, although I haven't seen a ton of his stand-up, but I'm sure it's an area he's working on. And I sure do look seeing for more of Andrei Petrovsky here in the near future. Definitely a guy I think that's got a great shot at making it to Bellator or the UFC if he continues on his path. Excuse me. Next on the list, KB Bueller, 28 years old, 6'4", 185, a really big middleweight. Habusa Training Center, good sized camp, fights out of Canada, 8 wins, no losses, 4 knockouts, 2 submissions. We look at his key wins. He's beat 11-7 Matt Dwyer and 30-fight veteran Cody Cran. Check out the video section below for some highlights and fights. Great to see another Canadian prospect. KB started as a young teenager, and I believe he started training in Taekwondo. Turned pro long ago, somewhere around 2012, so he's very seasoned. Throws nice short elbows. He's got an array of low kicks and high kicks. And also throws a nice left hook with power. He finishes fights from both a submission and knockout standpoint, as well as being able to go the distance. Very calm and calculated. As part of his repertoire, he seems to have a pretty high fight IQ, even though he's only had the professional fights. Again, southpaw with that classic Taekwondo stance. Fights very long and uses his length well. Good grappler and finds ways to set up submissions and win fights. Get that ground and pound in. Pretty well-rounded guy. I believe KB is very close to getting a UFC shot. I'd be surprised with one more win or less, you wouldn't see him get maybe a shot in a Contender Series or a UFC undercard soon. Great fighter, great guy to check out. KB Bueller. Next on the list, Djati Melan. Fighting out of originally Ivory Coast, but France. 6 feet, 185, 27 years old, 7 wins, no losses, 3 knockouts. Congo Smashing Club, where he trains with the great Czech Congo. Key wins, 9-2 Islam Besat, 4-2 Robert Valentine, and 6-3 Timur Masiev. In the video section below, you'll see some Cage Warrior fights and a few other odds and ends, so check him out. Born in the Ivory Coast, now fighting out of France, Dejan will be a great fit on the UFC undercard now that MMA is legalized in France. Relatively unknown, Milan is off to a great start in his MMA career. He's won the No-Gi Championship in France, European welds at 85 kilograms, so he's got that grappling background as well. Southpaw fighter, fairly light on his feet. Decent boxing, throws a nice straight left. Likes to close the distance to get the fight to the ground. So he likes to close the distance and get the fight to the ground, where he can kick in his grappling skills into play. Good top position and control to go along with some good ground and pound. Not a huge submission threat to date, but I'm sure the distance skill, I'm sure this is a skill where he also has no problem going to when need be with that grappling background. And again, he got no problem going the distance, so the gas tank is there. At this point, it'd be nice to see him get a shot at the UFC undercard or a shot in a contender series. I believe Dejan is there. Next on the list, moving over to Australia, and you gotta love Australians. These guys are warriors. Ian Fitikefu, 26 years old, 5'10", 185, 6 wins, no losses, 3 knockouts, 1 submission. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Smeaton Grange. Key wins 10-5, Keith Campbell, and 6-2, Cam Roston. Born in New Zealand before moving to Sydney, Australia. Started combat training, I believe karate at a very young age. Also dabbled in amateur boxing. Trains, of course, with the former UFC champion juggernaut Robert Whittaker. Light on his feet, good hands, and he's got a heavy KO power. Check out the videos for some really good knockouts. Shows good takedown defense and decent grappling. Heavy ground and pound. Would be interesting to see how he does against stronger competition. But he's a definite prospect, and I would say very close to getting signed by a bigger promotion, hopefully the UFC. Puts on exciting fights, and you would think with all his skill, his record, the way he wins, and his training partners, that this guy is close to a shot. So if you want to see an exciting prospect, check Izzy out, and you won't be disappointed. Next on the list, this guy is relatively unknown. Rinat Fakhretdinov, 28 years old, 6 feet 185, 19 wins, 2 losses. I have kind of 2 reports, one that he's 19-2, one that he's 17-1. 10 knockouts, 5 submissions, fighting out of Russia. Key wins 10-6, Johnny Carlos. He's beaten UFC veteran 14-4 Albert Ueda, 4-2 Negarzi Kleidar, 10-9 Denis Gonic, and 15-7 Fenel Reskov. So he's got a few nice wins. Again, Tapology and Sherdog have him at different records. He reminds me a lot of Matt Lindland. Both in his look and the way he fights. Known for fighting opponents new to the pro scene. The last few fights he's had, he stepped up competition, and he's excelled in both of those fights. He fights both southpaw and orthodox. He uses his jab and low click to quickly close the distance and get the fight to the ground, and that's where he's most comfortable. I haven't seen a ton of him stand up, but he doesn't like to keep the fight staying at this point. This guy finishes fights, 17 stoppages, ground control, transitions well, and decent ground and pound. But does throw some big power on the ground as well. And he one of those guys that really tires his opponent out. He smothers him. So, that kind of a record, with that kind of a finish rate, surely I kind of get the sense that Reno might be picked up by Bellator, with another win or two. I'd certainly like to see him get in there and get challenged by somebody with lots of experience. But definitely a prospect that's underrated, and check the guy out. Next on the list, 28 years old, Dustin Stoltzfus, 5'11", 185, 12 wins, 1 loss, 1 knockout, 5 submissions. American, but fights out of Germany. I believe his whole career was fought in Germany. He trains with the likes of Peter Sabata and Bojan Vlahovic. Key wins 9-5, Nati Nafukik. Bellator veteran Jonas Bilestein, great knockout over him. He's beaten 12-5 Salim Adjiev and 8-4 Arda Adas. Check out his fight with Billenstein. Great knockout at GMC 20. Another interesting prospect in the middleweight division. Again, born in USA, fighting in Germany. He's very fluent in the German language. He can fight southpaw, somewhat flat-footed, but throws good punches and a good low kick. Throws the odd high kick, front kick in to mix things up. Hasn't shown a lot of power until his recent fight when he had that nice KO over a tough Bellator veteran Jonas Billenstein. A good submission game with an array of sub-victories, including the ultra-rare twister submission. Has an array of submission victories and is a threat off both the top and bottom position. You have a FA middleweight champ who was supposed to fight in Brave CF, but because of the COVID-19 situation, it's been cancelled. He'd be a nice pickup for an undercard on an undercard on a UFC card, a Bellator card, or a Contender Series, and I'd say he's pretty close. So keep an eye out for him, Dustin Stoltzfus. Next on the list, Shamil Abdulaev, 29 years old, 6 feet 185, 12 wins, 1 loss, 6 submissions. 6 knockouts, 1 submission, fighting in Russia. CSKA Krepos Fight Club with the likes of Zibara Tukanov, Ali Aziev. So some great training opponents or training partners. Key wins 9-4 Patrick Oliveira, Wellington Lopez, who's 9-3, 20-11 Alexei Efrenov. He's beaten 15-4 Darren Imekov, Paul Bueno, who's 25-10, Andre Lenzo, who's 10-3, and 10-6 Ali Shlapalev. So again, he's fighting really tough opponents for a guy that has had 11-12 fights. Another great experienced Russian fighter that has an extensive amateur background. So these guys, it seems a lot of Russians, by the time they turn professional, some of them had 10 to 20 amateur fights, which by the time they turn pro, they're a step ahead of the curve. Very well-rounded fighter, southpaw, nice jab, decent boxing, and has one-punch KO power. He's one-punch KO'd opponents before. Throws nice low kicks, head kicks. Also throws a sneaky right high kick from the southpaw position. Good wrestling, good ground and pound, and at times nasty ground and pound. Not a huge submission threat, but for sure can submit opponents. He'd be a good fighter for a bigger promotion. UFC, Bellator, 1, PFL, you name it. Hopefully he decides to come stateside over to North America and fight for a bigger show. Next on the list, sticking with Russia. And this is the only guy that Shamil Abdulaev has lost to, and he goes by the name of Salamu Abdurakhmanov. 27 years old, 6 feet 185, 13 wins, 1 loss, 4 knockouts, 5 submissions. Bearcoot FC, which is full of tremendous fighters. That's his camp. Ali the Hulk Bagov, Yuzey Rasayev, fighting out of Russia. Key wins. He's beaten some great fighters. 15-2 Valery Mashenko, former Bellator veteran. Big win over him. Brett Cooper. Shamil Abdulaev, again to mention, 12-1 fighter. 15-6 Marco Parata. 20-11 Alexei Efrenov. 30-11 Delson Heleno, UFC veteran. And 23-6 Georgi Kitchen. So he's beat, some real excellent fighters with great records. Check out the video section below for some cool highlights. And again, continuing the stretch of outstanding Russian fighters, as mentioned, with a list of great fighters he's beat. Early in his career, he was more of a striker, which included some nice head kick KOs and TKOs. As his career progressed, he's been more of a cagey veteran and utilized good wrestling to get the job done. Good takedowns. He's got a nice double leg. Controls opponents very good. Transitions well. He finishes fights both with strikes and submissions, and also has some good ground and pound. He's got a real nice submission over Brett Cooper, a Bellator veteran. He put him to sleep. And just another great Russian prospect, off to a great start in his career. He's approaching his prime, and this guy would definitely be a nice fit for any big promotion. Next on the list, again sticking with Russia, man, she's stacked. Ayub Gimbatov, 29 years old, 6 foot 1, 185, 10 wins, 1 loss, 1 no contest, 3 knockouts, 6 submissions. Dagestan, Russia, turning into the motherhood of MMA. Academy MMA, Makalik is his gym. Key wins, UFC veteran 27-11 Stephen Kennedy, UFC veteran Mikhail Falco, 15-4 Darren Ikmakov, 10-1 Mirzuro Kamakov, 10-4 Alexei Maslov. So he's beaten some great fighters. Russia all day. Excellent, well-rounded fighter. Again, so many great Russians never come to North America for items such as visa, the military, that kind of stuff. Hopefully he can make a move. Has power. He's very patient until he needs to turn it up. And when he turns it up, he usually gets the job done. Good wrestling. A definite submission threat, good ground and pound, transitions well on the ground like his other opponent, like his other fellow Russian fighters we talked about. Fight finisher with nine stoppages out of 10 professional career wins. And he, like the previous 2 guys I talked about, he's 29 now, he's on the bubble. So he's pretty much in his prime. And if he's going to make the move, it'd be great to see him do it now. I could see that guy getting a shot in the Contender Series for sure. he's built up some momentum the last couple of years. Next on the list, Mariusz Ksiazkiewicz, 30 years old, 6 feet, 185, 8 wins, no losses, 2 knockouts, 5 submissions. Fighting out of Winnipeg Academy of Mixed Martial Arts. Key wins 18-9 Gilmore Razano, 7-4 Joe Valley, and 12-7-2 Dejan Kajic. BJJ black belt, I believe. Born in Germany, lives in Winnipeg. A very underrated fighter in my opinion. Southpaw that throws a nice left low kick. Good transitions on the ground. Definite submission threat. Heavy ground and pound and nasty elbows. A fight finisher with 7 stoppages out of 8 pro fights. He's been fighting pro for 8 years, I believe. So he's very savvy. He's had trouble finding opponents, and he's had some big gaps between fights. And now that he's 30 years old, it will be great to see him be more active, get some opponents, and get a shot. Most definitely a shot in Bellator or the UFC. The time is now. Check him out. Next on the list, Solomon Renfro, 5'10", 185. I'm not sure if he's still fighting at middleweight or is he down to welterweight. 23 years old, fighting at a USA, whiny MMA and fitness with the likes of Patrick Mix, Bellator veteran. 5 wins, no losses. Key wins, he's beaten 3-1 Eugene Aubry. And for the most part, the rest of his opponents have been like a lower level experience. Extensive amateur career. I could dig up a 10-1 record at minimum. Check out his videos. There's 4 or 5 in the section below. Former amateur King of the Cage champ. Solomon had a successful amateur career. And again, an extensive one at that. Not sure again if he's at 185 or 170. Very athletic and very powerful fighter. Trains hard. Hasn't stopped any opponents in the pro ranks yet, but don't let that fool you. This guy can finish fights. He started training mixed martial arts or martial arts at a very young age, 6 or 7 years old. I think he boxed in the Junior Olympics, wrestled in high school. Very well-rounded fighter, good takedowns and decent wrestling. Throws hard leg kicks and punches. You know, and like I said, even though he's yet to stop any in the pro, he had a couple of great, really tough fights. And don't let that non-stoppage record fool you. He'd be a great fit now for a Bellator or UFC undercard. I see him getting more fights before that happens, though. He's got a very high fight IQ. If you watch this guy, technically smart and powerful, compact, powerful fighter. So I sure would like to see him get a shot soon. But most definitely maybe get another couple of more wins on the regional scene, and let's see this guy get signed. Check him out. And again, as I continue, guys, make sure you know if you like this stuff, hit all these guys up on Instagram, Facebook. The more exposure they get, the better. And hopefully we'll see Solomon again soon. Next on the list, going back to Russia, Ibragim Magomedov, 25 years old, 6'1", 185, 5 wins, no losses, 1 TKO, another Dagestan Russian fighter, outstanding. Key wins, 12-2 Abdul Dzhanov. And Dzanov's tough. You got to win over UFC veteran Alex Garcia. The rest of his opponents, lower level, not many with winning records. Young athletic fighter who again has beat some good opposition. In the infancy of his career, fights in the ACA organization, so he's going to get some tough opponents. Very comfortable on his feet, well-rounded fighter, good takedown defense, good wrestling, hard to keep down. Uses defense well. Very active from the clinch, lots of knees, dirty boxing. Southpaw fighter, decent low kick. You know, he's good, smart, tactical wrestling with some nice ground and pound. Does have power, even though no KOs to date. Wears opponents out and really shows good conditioning. He's got that blanket type wrestling when he wants to use it. An impressive young prospect, typical Dagestan fighter. So many great fighters from that part of the world. Very early in his career, but for sure could be a future fighter and a big promotion. Next on the list, and I want to include this guy. He's a veteran. He's been around a long time. Vladimir Mineev. I'm not sure why he hasn't been picked up. 30 years old, 6'1", 185, 13 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, plus many, many kickboxing belts, which we'll talk about. Fights out of Russia. Fight night team with the likes of Vitaly Minakov, Abdul Karamelov, Ali Bakantinov, which are great training partners. 8 TKOs, 3 submissions. Let's go over his key victories. He has a lot of them. 10-3 Diego Diaz, 7-2 Milos Kostic, 12-3 Bellator veteran Andreas Malakis, UFC and Bellator veteran Mikhail Falco, 2011 Usami Onato, 1911 Boris Grishenko, Xavier Fukupakam, UFC veteran, he's beat him, and 14-5 Mikhail Shredem. So he's beat some great opponents. Check out the video section. There's some good knockout highlights of him. At his age, he may not get the call. 30 years old. I'm surprised at this point he never got, the UFC or Bellator offer. Very accomplished combat athlete. Big kickboxing background, so he's very technical on his feet. Very precise leg kicks and throws some hard, nice punches. KO'ing 8 opponents out of 13 fights. He picks opponents apart and has big KO power. Professional kickboxing record, from what I can see, at 24 wins and 2 losses. Also, no slouch on the ground with 3 submission victories. The challenge for him, of course, would be competing against a high-level wrestler or against somebody with very high jiu-jitsu. A laundry list of accomplishments in his career: 2013 WKN Kickboxing Heavyweight World Champ, 2013 Waco Pro K1 Rules Cruiserweight Champ, 2012 WKA Heavyweight Champ, 2011 WBK1 K1 European Champ, 2009 Warco Pro KO Super Heavyweight Champ, and also many, many more amateur championships. That was just to kind of give you an idea of this guy's background in combat sports. Hopefully somebody will pick this guy up soon. I'm not sure if he's got visa issues or whatever the case is, but the man's 30 years old. Let's see him get a shot on the UFC card in Russia. That would be phenomenal. Next on the list, moving back to USA, Cody Brundage, 25-6-1, 185, 5 wins, no losses, 3 knockouts, 1 submission. USA, again, Scorpion Fighting System is his gym. Key wins today, nobody really of note, but check out the videos below. You get some good highlights of him, and he's got a good series on YouTube called Life in the Cage, so check him out. Wrestling and more wrestling. Of course, one of the best, if not the best, bases to have in mixed martial arts. NCAA Division II qualifier multiple times. Wrestling is he's very technical with his wrestling, and he uses that wrestling to open up submission threats. He has fought above 185 in the past, so he'll be a good-sized middleweight. Cody also has power as he's KO'd opponents, and he also has some good ground and pound. Fairly comfortable on his feet. Overall, a well-rounded fighter. A couple of wins at the most, and I'd say you'll see Cody getting a shot in Bellator or on the Contender Series. Check him out, Cody Brundage. Next on the list, sticking with the US of A, 25 years old, Orion Cosce, 5'11", 180. I believe he may be looking at fighting at 170 now, but he's 6 wins, no losses. Couple of amateur wins too that I can find. 5 knockouts, 1 submission. Lost Boy Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, Alpha Male training camp. UFC personal trainer in Rockland, California. Key wins 4-1, Joseph Kopstop. Again, check out some video section below. Great looking fighter with a wrestling base. The former Hopa alum is starting to make some noise in the MMA prospect world. This guy finishes fights, 6 stoppages in 6 fights. He has had some very quick KOs. Also has the ability to win via TKO or submission. Exciting fighter to watch. 6 wins in a year and a half since turning pro. Very active. Southpaw fighter with power and good hard leg kicks. Has a nice double leg and controls well when the fight's on the mat. He's got a big strike left, some heavy ground and pound punches and elbows from top position. He puts opponents out. Exciting, powerful, and very interesting prospect. He will for sure be a shoo-in for a bigger promotion if he continues his winning ways. Moving on now to Brazil. Mário Sousa, 23 years old, 6'5", 185, so a massive middleweight. 11 wins, 1 loss, 7 knockouts, 4 submissions. Crazed the Ravine. It's a big fight team out of Brazil. Key wins 13-3 Luis Felipe, 6-4 Everton Vieira. Most of his opponents have been low level besides that. Again, huge, massive middleweight at 6'5". Finishes fights, 11 wins, 11 finishes. Good on the ground. Dangerous submission threat from both top and bottom position. Has shown that he can KO opponents. TKO with good hard ground and pound. Takedowns and slams from time to time. Wins fights in a variety of different ways, whether it be TKO or submission. Max fight champ. Monitoring fight combat champ. Still some rawness, especially in the stand-up, but he's a good athlete with some good jiu-jitsu, and at just 23, he can become a more established fighter. Interesting enough, I'd say we're very close to seeing this guy get signed by the UFC or the Contender Series, probably with another win or two at the most. Check him out, Mário Sousa. Next on the list, Will Curry, 21 years old, 6'2", I believe. Don't have an exact height. 185, 4 wins, no losses, 4 submissions. I have him at 5-0 as an amateur as well. Fighting out of England. Key wins. Most of his opponents to date have been low experience level. Trained with some great guys. Jimmy Manua, Albert Renzo Gracie, to name a few guys. Big, young, strong, and athletic. Starting to gain some local following as he rises up to prospect ranks. KFN amateur champ. Very calm, cool, and collected for such a young guy, which has a lot to do with having such great training partners. Nice double leg and very skilled on the ground. Has overwhelmed opponents to date. Smothering them and submitting opponents in a variety of ways. I haven't seen enough of his striking to comment on his stand-up game, but a great looking prospect. And if he continues his ways, for sure you can see this guy being picked up. Next on the list, Anthony Salomon, 24 years old, 6 feet, 185, fighting in France. Team touring, 6 wins, 3 submissions, 1 knockout, no losses. He's beat 5-2 Palmerano. First pro fight in 2012, somewhere around the age of 17. Very strong, powerful, and rugged individual. Very athletic. Fights at a high pace. Started wrestling at a very young age. 3-time Greco-Roman France national champ to go along with some France grappling titles. Anthony fights at a high pace and for the most part finishes fights. Great wrestling, of course. Great takedowns. And really smothers opponents on the ground. Closes the distance fast. Entertaining fighter to watch. And adds some heavy ground and pound to his repertoire. An area, unknown is his stand-up game. I mean, he looks pretty comfortable on his feet, but I haven't seen enough of striking to, make a whole lot of comments. He's had some long stints away from MMA to pursue wrestling, but let's hope he gets back on track with MMA. He's a great prospect and definitely could see him getting picked up someday. Next on the list, heading over to Poland, Andrzej Bartosiński. 6'1", 185, octopus loads. 8 wins, no losses, if you count his 2 victories on the KSW reality show. 6 knockouts, 1 submission. Key wins, 5-0 Kamil Delaski, 30-fight veteran Kostin Linek, and 5-2 Kristen Belatsky. Finishes fights with 7 stoppages at 8 fights. Last fight again was on the KSW reality series. Not sure what's going on with that show because of the COVID-19 situation, but nonetheless, he's got a couple of wins there, so he's advanced. Again, he's fought respectable competition at this point in his career. Good wrestling base, good takedowns and slams, believe it or not. Also some decent jiu-jitsu, controlling opponents on the ground, and has a nice wrestling trip, single leg takedown. Decent ground and pound, decent elbows. Fairly comfy on the feet, mixes in a nice low kick to go along with his boxing. Another good prospect on the growing list of prospects out of Poland, which they continue to pump guys out every year. Next on the list, going back to Brazil, Caio Borralho, 27 years old, 6'1", 185, trains with the likes of Damian Maia, Shogun Rua, at the Combat Club Damian Maia team. So great opponent, 7 wins, 1 loss, 1 no contest, 3 knockouts, 3 submissions. Caio's been training martial arts for a long time. Started in judo and jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai for close to a decade. Believe he's a brown belt in both judo and jiu-jitsu. A fight finish from a KO or submission perspective. Southpaw fighter, throws hard kicks, elbows, and punches, and mixes in that front kick very nicely to keep opponents at bay. Also shows decent ground skills with good ground and pound and grappling transitions. He is definitely a submission threat. Overall, a good, well-rounded fighter who puts on entertaining fights. For sure, I would see this guy getting picked up with another victory or 2 at the most. Next on the list, Gilbert Urbina fighting at the USA. BMF ranch, of course, with the great Donald Cerrone. 6 wins, 1 loss, 2 submissions, 1 knockout. 24 years old, 6'3", 180. I'm not sure if he's going to go to welterweight or middleweight. Key wins, Andre Trevino, 7-4. 5-2 Noel Lagan. The only loss of his career was the current UFC fighter and undefeated 12-0 Sean Brady. And that was a decision loss, so no shame there. Very athletic, built athlete. Good footwork, head movement. Pretty good fighter that moves forward and fights at a high pace, mixes in punches, kicks, and elbows very well. He can win via TKO or submission, also works well from the clinch. Nice knees in the tie clinch. And I believe he now fights for Combate America, so get some exciting fights in that promotion. You know, he's a crowd-pleasing fighter. A great chance we'll see this guy in a contender series. That's my feel, a contender series or an undercard card or UFC undercard with another couple of victories. So check him out, Gilbert Urbina. Next on the list, Megodral Gastanov, 25 years old, 6 feet, 185, 13 wins, 2 losses, 3 knockouts, 1 submission. Gorabats with the likes of Rashid Magomedov fighting in Russia. Key wins, 6-0 Walashi Babkin, 7-3 Alexei Promogin, 10-1 previously mentioned, 10-1 Azabat Bekov, 9-3 Zalum Ayubov, 9-2 Megozab Gerov, 7-3 Evgen Palov, 15-5 Valisi Karakshin. So you can see this trend. He's beaten a lot of great fighters. Don't let that only 4 finishes out of 13 victories fool you. Very, very good wrestling, grappling, athletic fighter. Well trained. Very good gas tank. And again, don't be judged by just 4 finishes in 13 fights. He's an excellent, dangerous fighter. Very strong and powerful. Uses range well and nullifies opponents with strategically closing the distance. Good takedowns and control once the fight is the mat. Very intelligent with his grappling. Very technical. And has become very hard to beat over the last number of years. Hope to see more of this guy. He's in a tough promotion now, but definitely an underrated prospect. Okay, next on the list. Fighting out of Poland, Andreas Grzybek, 29 years old, 6 feet, 185, 16 wins, 3 losses, 9 knockouts, 3 submissions. Legion Team Turnov out of Poland. He's got an 18-second knockout over 12-4 Robert Fatsika, 14-7 Kamil Grastov, and 10-4 Thiago Vieira. He's beaten Anatoly Litev, who's 5-1, and 19-9 Marcin Rizuka, 8-4 Michael Petrek, 16-7 Midos Verbekes, and 17-6 Kamil Zhukanov ski. So he's beaten some great fighters. Tough, gritty, tested veteran that has been, you know, in some very tough fights. He's been fighting pro for close to a decade, and he finishes fights with 12 stoppages out of 16 victories. He's beat some good, solid opponents. He's very gritty. He's been in brawls, and he's been clipped before, and he's come back from, you know, the brink of defeat to get the win. So that's always important. Throws good, quick punches and has power. Mixes in some nice leg kicks, some nice knees. He's pretty good from the clinch. Ferocious ground and pound when he gets top position. 9 knockouts, but he can still submit you, of course, with those 3 submission victories. To my knowledge, has never been submitted. At 29, the time is now. You know what? I think this guy potentially with a little bit more exposure will get signed pretty quickly because of that record and the way he fights. Moving on, back to Brazil. Wildemar Santos, 24 years old, 6'3", 185. Machado team, Gracie Barra, Joel America, 7 wins, no losses, 1 knockout, 4 submissions. Key wins, 10-8, Patrick Quadros and Rafael Teixeira, 9-5, Fernando Ribeiro. An undefeated, very large, 6'3" middleweight, who just so happens to also be a jiu-jitsu black belt. Not a bad combination at all. So, you know, speaking of a stand-up game first, he's a fairly comfortable guy on his feet. Mixes in punches well with some low kicks, but, you know, an area in which I'm sure he'll have to continue to improve on. Transitions very well on the ground for such a big man, and he's definitely a submission threat from both top and bottom positions. Interesting prospect. Great to see some up-and-comers at middleweight from Brazil. So many prospects over the years from that great country. It wouldn't take many more wins for this guy to get a call with his size, his, you know, his submission jiu-jitsu background, being a black belt, and the way he finishes fights. Next on the list, Asmat Bekov, 10 wins, 1 loss, 3 knockouts, 6 submissions, fighting out of Russia, 24 years old, 5'11", 185. Atlanta Fight Team. Key wins, 7-2, Mikhail Gravkov, and 7-3, Alexei Maslov. Fights in the BYE organization, of course, which is kind of the minors of the ACA, so you get some tough fights there. Another great Russian fighter that has some good wrestling and finishing fights with 9 stoppages out of 10 wins, both from a TKO, KO, or submission standpoint. He's got an array of submission wins, very, very submission savvy. He has KO'd opponents, so he's shown he's got the ability to one-punch opponents. But wrestling is his bread and butter. Well-rounded fighter, young and athletic. Very relentless on opponents, wears them out, and then goes in for the finish. Great-looking prospect. Next on the list, moving right along, Earl Small, 26 years old. Fights, I believe, at both 185, maybe down to 170. 3-0 with 3 submissions. I also have him at 4-0 as an amateur. Fighting out of America, Balance Studios. Check out the videos attached. 2-time IBJJ medalist, Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Finishes, opponents, all pro finishes, and all all professional wins and amateur wins I know about have all come from submission standpoint. Very, very slick jiu-jitsu skills. If you watch some of his videos that I've watched and I've attached, you'll see, albeit his opponents have been low level, he's been, tremendous on the ground. Basically a submission threat from almost any position, whether it be on his back, top position, or could be anything. Flying triangles, twisters, and more, you name it. Impressive stuff. I haven't seen much facets of his game, but just based on how high level his jiu-jitsu is alone, makes him an interesting prospect, and hopefully he's going to continue on his fighting. I haven't seen any fights on record since late 2018, so hopefully we'll see more of Earl, but a great-looking, dangerous jiu-jitsu fighter for sure. Next on the list, going back to the great country of Australia, another great fighter, Jacob Malkin, 24 years old, 6'1", 185, 4 wins, no losses, 2 TKO victories. Trains again with the great former UFC juggernaut Robert Whittaker. Key wins, 9-5 Christopher Van Dijk and 6-2 Cam Roston. Great looking up and coming prospect with some great training partners. Again, like Robert mentioned, like Robert Whittaker. Great hands, speed, accuracy, and power. Throws nice knees to the body. Very good speed, athleticism, and transitions on the ground. Also shows a good gas tank and the ability to wear opponents out, go the distance, or win via TKO. Mixes in good ground and pound to add to his overall ground game. I'm not sure about his submission skills. I haven't really seen a whole lot of it, but I know he's competed in tournaments like the IF, BJJ, 2019 Pan Pacific, so I know he grapples. And a great looking prospect, and I would say, again, based on the record, the way he wins, the way he fights, and his training partners, I'd say this guy is close. And, MMA in Australia is growing, so I would say it wouldn't take very much for this guy to get picked up by the UFC. Hopefully we'll see him with another win or two. Next on the list, moving over to England, Kevin Mullen, 25 years old, 6'2", 185. I got him at 4-0 with 4 knockouts. Team Folkestone. I believe he had 20 or more amateur fights, but I have no stats on that. Good, fairly young middleweight, athletic, and he finishes fights. Very athletic, great leg kicks with power. Throws punches and kicks from different angles. Tornado kicks, you name it. Southpaw, an orthodox fighter with what appears to be a pretty good fight IQ. Also showing some good judo throws, decent takedowns, and good ground and pound, including nasty elbows. Hasn't fought since late 2018, so hopefully he's still in the game. I don't have a lot more on him, but he's definitely an interesting prospect. Hope to see him again soon, Kevin Mullen. Next on the list, Ivan Kosic, 22 years old, 5'11", 185, 6 wins, no losses, 1 knockout, 4 submissions. UFD gym, the likes of David Zawada and Lombardo, fighting out of Croatia. Another young athletic prospect that finishes fights with 5 stoppages and 6 career wins. A definite submission threat. He fights at a high pace and is very offensive from a grappling standpoint. Also comfortable on the feet. He throws high volume punches with some pop, so he's no slouch there either. He's still untested. Cosce puts on some, exciting, entertaining fights. So let's hope to see him get a fight again soon. Again, I don't believe he's fought, in quite some time now, a year or better. So hopefully he's still in the game and a great prospect with a chance to become, a fighter on a bigger promotion. Next on the list, Imam-Shapi Mukhtarov. 24, 6'3", 185, fighting out of Russia. 7 wins, no losses, 5 knockouts, 1 submission. Good-sized middleweight, southpaw fighter that finishes fights. Hard leg kicks, both low and to the body and head. He's got some highlight head kick knockouts you'll see in the video section below. Good hands, throws straight, hard, strong punches with lots of oomph behind him. Also, not too shabby on the ground with a very nice submission win at GFC 16. In the video attached, transitions well on the ground. I don't have a lot of information on him, and some of these fighters are going to breeze through fairly quick because there's so many. But even with the limited information, pretty decent looking prospect, so check him out. Next on the list, another guy I don't have a lot of information on, but Gadzhimurad Khebdeev. 27 years old out of Russia, 6'2", 185, 6 wins, no losses. Some sites have him at 7-0, 2 knockouts, 4 submissions. I believe he had a pretty good amateur run as well. Key wins, UFC veteran Amilcar Alves. Very unknown to many. Finishes fights with 6 stoppages and 6 pro wins with a variety of finishes from a head kick KO to a nasty Kimura to a triangle choke. Well-rounded fighter. Another good Russian fighter that's come from an amateur background before he turns pro. He's quite the physical specimen. I, again, don't have a ton of information on him, but based on what I know, I want to include him in the list. And another guy that hasn't fought in over a year, so hopefully we see more of him. Next on the list, Vadim Koynov. I believe he's 22, but I have no confirmation on that. 6'2", 185, your real top team out of Russia. 4 wins, no losses, 3 knockouts. Key wins, he's beat 9-4 Sergey Proskanov. I believe that was in the RCC intro promotion. They put on a Road to PFL show. Tall, long, young, athletic, still somewhat raw, a little bit flat-footed, but he finishes fights. He does have a couple of, at least one nice head kick KO knockout. He's beaten opponents, stopped them with the hands. So he shows that ability to win fights, and he's gone the distance. I believe that, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe he's been involved in combat sports for some time now as a youngster. Haven't seen a ton of his ground game, but he's very athletic. He's very long, strong, young kid, so I'm sure that area of his game isn't bad. Seen a little bit of his wrestling, which looked pretty good. Again, very untested, very green, but I wanted to give him a shout out. Could be a pretty significant fighter someday. Next on the list, Magomedzagid Isalov, 27, 5'8", 180. Don't know if he's sticking at middleweight or going to 170. A Russian fighter, 4 wins, no losses, 4 submissions. Fun fighter to watch. Possibly, better size for welterweight, like mentioned. Great takedowns and slams. Really great slams you'll see in the video attached. Effective ground fighter. Subbing all his opponents to date. Great wrestling on the ground. Not sure, again, how his stand-up look. I really haven't seen much of it. Again, he's cruised through all his opponents to dates. Classic Dagestan fighter, fighting out of Russia again. This Dagestan is just loaded with athletes. Really incredible stuff. Again, 27 years old, 4-0. It'd be great to see more of this guy. He's pretty fun to watch. And keep an eye out for him because he could be on a Bellator UFC card down the road sometime. Next on the list, a guy I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Hashem Arkhagha. 30 years old, so he's on the bubble from an age standpoint. 6'2", 185, 5 wins, no losses, 3 knockouts, 2 submissions. Fighting out of Jordan. K-Dojo Warrior Tribute and Team Mirzaei. He's beat 1 punch knockout victory over Jeremy Smith, who's 9-7, and 10-7 Malte Salama. Check out the video section below. It shows that great knockout over Smith, and also shows a great war with Sabi, which he got clipped and came back. He's got a big following locally. He returned after a long layoff. I think he was off 6+ years. with that great walk-off KO victory against Jeremy Smith. Considered a pioneer legend in his region, Hashem puts on exciting fights, folks. He's a fight finisher with both striking and submission, finishing all pro victories by stoppage to date. Throws good hard straight punches and is displayed in the video section below as one-punch KO power. Also very tricky on the floor with a couple of nice submission victories under his belt to date. He shows resilience, as mentioned. He's been clipped in a fight before bad and came back, weathered the storm and got the victory. So that's important too for a fighter. I believe he's newly signed to Brave CF and he's scheduled to fight Swedish veteran Diego Gonzalez. Of course, I believe all the cards have been delayed because of the COVID-19. But I'd like to see this guy, get a couple more victories. And while he's still relatively, he's on the bubble age, but maybe in the next year or two if he gets some victories, I'd love to see him fight North America or anywhere across the world for that matter on a UFC card or a Bellator card. So definitely a guy to check him out. A wily veteran and a great fighter, Hashem Arkhagha. Next on the list in Brazil, Rodrigo Gomes, 25 years old, 6'1.5". I believe he's a 175 to 180 guy, so he may have been moving down to welterweight. Guerrero team, good size camp, 9 wins, no losses, 1 draw, 5 knockouts, 2 submissions. Key wins, he's beaten 6-2 Aliro Sevilla. And 45 fight veteran Julio Brick, 7-4 Vilton Lopez. Fought at both welterweight and middleweight. May see him at 170 next. Fight finisher with 7 stops and 9 pro victories. Decent stand-up. Mixes in punches and kicks well. Seems to understand distance. A lot of his competition has been lower level, but he has looked good in all his victories. Still like to see him in there against a tough opponent soon. Decent jiu-jitsu. He's seen a lot of his grappling. Haven't seen a lot of his grappling and wrestling talent, but he looks pretty decent. At 9-0 with 7 stoppages, and at just 25 years of age, he gets a spot on the list. Let's hope to see more of him soon. All right, moving right along. We're getting close to the end, folks. Saeid Mirzaei, fighting out of Canada. I think he was born in Iran. Titan MMA, 2 wins, no losses, 1 draw. Extensive amateur background, 1 knockout, 1 submission. Key win over 9-7, Nicole Curry. You may ask why I've included a fighter with a 2-0 record on this list. It's because of his extensive amateur background. At minimum, I had him at 16-3 as an amateur. 2015 IMMAF World Champ at 205. BFL welterweight and lightweight champ. He's been fighting MMA for a long time, close to 10 years. Started training at an early age, I believe, in wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu competitions. Born in Iran, eventually moved to Canada at a fairly young age. He finishes fights in a variety of ways with strikes and an arsenal of submission wins. Again, don't let the record fool you. He's well ahead of his time when it comes to his 3 professional fights. High fight IQ, well-trained and mentored. Very well-rounded fighter. Fights at super welterweight this time, 175. So I decided to include him in the middleweight video. But I think you'll see this guy moving down to 170. Very interesting prospect and great to have him on this list. Another good prospect coming out of Canada, so check him out. Next on the list, Vladimir Mineev, fighting out of Russia, 24 years old, 6'2", 185. Sex Pro is his team. 6 wins, no losses, 3 knockouts, 3 submissions. 6-2 for key wins. 6-2 Terry Kamagov. 9-3 Thomas Robertson. 7-3 Andrei Bartosiński. A quick shout out to Vladimir. I don't have a ton of information on him. Only 6 pro fights to date. He hasn't fought any weak competition. He's beat some great guys for a person that only has 6 professional fights. And with the 6 stoppages and 6 fights, that's got to be recognized as well. Decent striker, throwing hard punches, mixes in the low kick as well with some knees from the tie clinch. Also can submit opponents from top and bottom position. Again, not much info on him, but I wanted him on the list. Moving on to the very last guy, Gadzhi Omargadzhiev. Fighting out of Russia, Golden Team. It's a big team out of Russia with the likes of Magomed Ismailov and Albir Serkov. If you're close to the Russian scene, some great fighters there. 27 years old, 6'1", 185, 11 wins, no losses, 7 knockouts, 3 submissions. Key wins, 17-9. Metos Sosi Campi. 6 16-4 Bellator veteran Artur Pronin, and 9-2 Artur Khabazov. Extensive amateur career as well, I believe. But 11-0 is a professional record. Fight finisher with 10 stoppages and 11 wins, both with strikes and submissions. Most of his opposition lower level. He uses his wrestling to take the fight to the ground where he wants it. The majority of fights I've seen he's won by ground and pound. He's also a submission threat for many different victories or positions. He may struggle against tougher competition. It'd be great to see him in there with an upper echelon fighter soon. But with an 11-0 record, 10 stoppages, the amateur background, I wanted to include him on the list and keep this at a nice even number of 40 fighters. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. We kind of breezed through it fairly fast with 40 fighters. But in closing, I want to thank everybody for watching. We have 2 parts left in the 2020 series. Still have to do the flyweight division, and we still have to do the women's division. Again, thanks everybody for watching. Please hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, and hit the fighters up as well on the social media accounts. If you like my videos, please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share, and I look forward to being back in a couple weeks. We'll probably do the flyweight division next, and then we'll probably hit up the ladies' prospects, women's prospects to close out the series. Again, I want to thank all the fighters. This has been a great bunch to work with, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Thank you.